Good afternoon, good evening to everybody. This is coming up towards the end of day 3 on our Learn and Redefined conference. This is our first ever online conference, and I'm Graham Trick, Learning Specialist here at Showbie. For those of you who've not met Showbie before, we're a hybrid learning platform. We're empowering over 3 million users globally, and our aim is to provide richer, deeper, more personalized feedback and assessment to all learners. So something that we're really proud of doing, because we're coming up to our 10th birthday in the next 12 months. And if you want to find out more about the platform, please visit us at showbie.com. During the presentation, please use the Q&A feature or the chat feature. We'll be keeping an eye out on it. And Andrew and Craig, who I'm going to introduce you to, they're happy to field questions as they're delivering them and look to answer them. So for now, I'd like to welcome Craig and Andrew to the session where we're going to explore the use of augmented reality in the classroom to create immersive learning experiences. So guys, over to you. I'm just going to put myself on mute and turn my camera off and sit back, relax and enjoy.
Thanks, Graham. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're tuning in from today. It's a pleasure to be here. We're excited to be here. It's both Andrew and I are based here in Singapore, and it's 10 p.m. here in Singapore, but it's a pleasure to be here this evening. Do a quick introduction of ourselves, and then we'll dive into a little bit of learning around immersive technologies. My name is Craig Kemp. I'm a globally connected educator, consultant, teacher, leader, originally from New Zealand. So please don't hold that against me, especially if you're coming in or tuning in from other parts of the world where the All Blacks tend to beat you in a game of rugby or the Black Caps in a game of cricket. So don't hold that against me about our sporting prowess. I've moved to Singapore 9 years ago as a teacher and a leader to lead learning, particularly in the field of educational technology. My last role was Director of Technology and Innovation at Stanford American International School here in Singapore, 3,200 students across multiple campuses. Our job was to support the authentic and purposeful use of technology into classrooms across our school. 2 years ago, I left that role and started up my own consultancy company, Ignite EdTech. The Ignite EdTech team now delivers professional learning in the realm and niche area of educational technology and innovation to schools all over the world, at conferences and events similar to this. We work with EdTech companies all over the world to support them in their strategy and development. And today we're very excited to be here to share one of our passion areas that Andrew and I have been working within this space and learning about this area for the past 2 years. And it's a pleasure to be here to talk about what we truly and firmly believe with immersive technologies is the future of what we're going to see in our classrooms. So with that, I'll pass you over to Andrew to do a little bit of an introduction himself. Andrew.
Thanks, Craig. Craig and I have had parallel paths in many ways. I also came to Singapore 9 years ago. I'm a past school principal, an ed tech person in my heritage and my history prior to that ed tech leadership. Came to Singapore to head up Director of IT at the Australian International School, the school some 3 Ks away from where Craig was working, and met Craig through that capacity. And I moved from that into being the head of learning and development for the company that owns those 2 schools. Some of you might know Cognita as a company that owns about 70 plus, probably 75 schools around the world now. September 2019, I took a similar move to Craig, set up my own practice, largely in delivering training around conversation, leadership, metacognition, and ed tech. They're my 4 sort of areas that combine to be my wheelhouse. And in more recent times, Craig and I have always said that we'd do something together, and that certainly has been the case, particularly in 2021. I don't think either of us saw COVID coming. I certainly didn't when I made the step into being a consultant some 3 months before it arrived. And as you can probably hear from my accent, I'm from the West Island of New Zealand, that bigger one that has a larger population of people than it does sheep. So sorry, Craig, I had to get that one in. But loving the work with Craig, and very much interested in taking full advantage of what technology can provide for us. Particularly from my perspective, I like to go back to the neuroscience and interrogate the technology in terms of what it might be providing. So I'm a bit of a metacognition tragic from that point of view. And the bit that I'll talk about tonight is, what does the neuroscience say about immersive technologies? So thanks, Craig.
Yeah, and today, these are the areas that we're going to be focusing in on. So here are our key points, really, as we drive it and I guess move into the area of immersive experiences, and not just immersive technologies, but how those really add value and the potential that they have for the learning that we have in our classrooms. How student learning is being driven by those experiences as well, and why we as curators of this learning are really the people that need to drive that within our schools. And the last thing that we'll do is we'll show you a quick dive into the Hologo app. And we're proud to be here today as representatives and people who are actually working with the Hologo team to support them in their growth and development of the technology that they provide to support deep learning. If we can go to the next slide there, Andrew. I wanted to start today by the way I've actually been starting a lot of my webinars and workshops and sessions lately. And by lately, I mean for nearly 15 months now, as we find ourselves in this unique world. Here in Singapore, just on Monday, after having our kids in schools and living a very normal life since the beginning of this academic year in August, we were thrown into a bit of a spiral and into a semi-lockdown. And our kids started home-based learning today. Both Andrew's kids and my children were at home today for the first day in a very long time, experiencing what many of you have been experiencing over the past few months. And I've been working with schools and leaders and educators all over the world over the past 15 months. And this is really what I've pulled out about what's happening in the space of EdTech and innovation. We got thrown in the deep end and we had to adapt to that change. The teacher's workload is now understood. Parents understand just how hard we work. And, that was really thrusted in the forefront of my mind today when I was sitting there with my 7-year-old daughter, trying to do my work and have my calls, but at the same time, lending a hand to help her with her math or make sure she was getting on her link with her call. And you really do. And I'm a teacher myself, and I really started to understand and think about, and our teachers work so hard. That's what I love about this, that our parents now understand that it's not a 9-to-3 job. We don't have cushy vacations. We actually work very, very hard. And as a result, those mindsets are changing. It's allowing us to actually push boundaries. It's allowing us to enter the zone that we're going to talk about today, about working and learning with immersive technologies. For a long time, immersive technologies have existed, but have we been ready for it? No, we haven't. And now is the time, whether we like it or not, it's time to move into this next phase of using immersive technologies to add value to learning. In our schools, we've had to change the way we do professional learning. You're here right now in your own time. For those of you in the UK, it's 3 p.m. Those of you in the US, for many of you, it's in the morning. And here in Asia and Pacific, it's late in the afternoon and evening, 10 p.m. here in Singapore. And, the way that we learn now is like nothing else. Do I see myself in a conference face-to-face with people in the next 6 to 12 months? Not at all. I don't think it's going to happen. And that's the reality we have to deal with. In some countries and territories, yep, that's going to happen. Australia and New Zealand doing an amazing job. Other parts of the world, increasingly the same. But the learning that we do now has been disrupted, and it will continue to be disrupted. And we have to be at that position of going, right, if we're going to change education, now's the time for us to change it. We have to have to make sure that we don't overload ourselves with so many tools and so many opportunities with this EdTech that we burn ourselves out. We pick the right ones, we think about the future, we think about the learners in our classrooms, and make sure we align those experiences with the technologies that are most appropriate. And we build that all around the idea of strategy. And, you know, in many cases around the world, I would always say, and I've heard this a lot within so many different contexts, you know, strategy is important, but culture eats strategy for breakfast. You know, if you don't have a culture in your school where technology is seen as something positive, then you're never going to be able to strategize to achieve success. If we can go to the next slide, Andrew, that'd be great. You know, the World Economic Forum in December of last year released their Future of Jobs report. And this is just a snippet of the 300-page document that is the Future of Jobs report. And I encourage you to go and take a look at that. But this is the part that stands out to me. These are the top 10 skills that tens of thousands of subject matters, thousands of research studies showed that these are the skills that our learners are going to need to be successful in 2025. Now, this is less than 4 years away. You know, this is not far in the future. And the World Economic Forum says that we can only predict 3 to 4 years in the future and actually be quite accurate about what we're doing, because technology changes so fast and it's rapidly changing with the scenarios that we're being dealt with. You know, we're in a COVID world now, you know, this new way of learning, way of living, and technology is changing to adapt to that. And when we look at these top 10 skills, 50% of them are related to problem solving. You know, when I look at this list, if I was a teacher or a leader or whatever context you're in your role, look at this list and think to yourself, you know, do I do this? Do I explicitly teach these skills? Am I giving my students an opportunity to learn in this way that's going to support them in the future? And, you know, often we can't say we do. We're in this environment where a lot of our school districts, our schools, the curriculums we run, you know, control us in a way that stop us from being able to push boundaries. Now more than ever is the perfect time to push those boundaries. You know, now more than ever, you can use things like immersive technologies to actually move to a place where we can use problem-solving skills. You know, we can actually modify learning experiences and we can redefine them. If we can go to the next slide, Andrew, please. And that sort of brings us into the SAMR model. The SAMR model, developed by the amazing Ruben Putendera, as a framework to support the way we look at the way we use technology in all of our life, whether it's in the classroom or in our professional world as well. You know, and he says it's not a ladder. We don't work ourselves up from the bottom when we substitute something and get to the top and redefine it. When we look at any learning experience, and this is a tool, and there's several of these out there as well, but when we look at this in a school setting, I always say to teachers and leaders, you know, don't go into your lesson planning and put, I'm redefining this by using the Hologo app to use immersive experiences. That doesn't make any difference to the outcome. It doesn't affect teaching and learning. It doesn't, you know, no one's going to tick a box and say, well done, you put an R next to your lesson plan. Use this as a framework and a way of completing or creating learning experiences that actually transform learning. You know, when I think of substitution, I think of today, my daughter was writing in her writing book, and then immediately she went straight into the zone of going into a Google Doc, and she's grade 1, you know, she's 7 years old. And these skills are skills that I didn't learn until I was, you know, 13, 14, 15. Our kids are learning these skills earlier than ever. She was able to augment that learning experience. And when it was appropriate, transform that task, move that task and enhance it by moving it to a tool like Google Docs. Then, without having to force her, she actually used some tools within Google Docs to modify the learning experience, to share with a partner. You know, she shared it with me and I was able to actually jump in and help her and give her feedback. she modified this learning experience without any support from me. And it was something that her teacher didn't even encourage them to do, but it was the way she learns best. And that's something that we have to remember when we create learning experiences for our kids, that we truly do want to modify and redefine the learning experience. And that's where immersive technologies play a huge part in our world now, but more importantly, in the world that our students are going to be living in 3 or 4 years' time. A world that is immersed by augmented reality, by XR, by experiences that allow us to actually jump in to a space or into a learning experience and walk around and see it and feel it. Not a world where we're closed off in a virtual reality type experience, but we can actually jump into an immersive world with my phone, or an iPad or on a desktop and dive into a 3D model. It allows us to do something that was previously inconceivable. And if we go to the next slide, Andrew, before I pass it on to you as well, I love this quote from Simon Sinek, who says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do. And the reason why I share this is because Simon Sinek is not from an education world, but this fits so perfectly into everything I do every day, whether it's in my personal life or in my professional life. I always say to myself, why? What's my why for this? And if I can't justify that why, then I don't do it. Today I'm here sharing to you about immersive learning experiences. And if I couldn't justify why you should jump on board and give this a go, then I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here to give you this opportunity to learn in a different way, to think in a different way, to push boundaries to the way you've always done things. And I want you, as Andrew shares now and talks a little bit more about immersive experiences and metacognition, I really want you to think about that. So Andrew, I'll pass it over to you. And I'd love for you to dive a bit deeper into this.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. I had the pleasure, as a part of something that Craig and I are working on together, and something no doubt you'll hear more of at a later stage, but I had the pleasure of interviewing, for the purpose of creating an online course, Professor Yong Zhao last week. And I love him because he's a bit of a rascal. He's a bit of a shaker in the education world and likes to poke holes in our current paradigms. And these, I'm sure he said these words elsewhere, but in the call, in the session we had together, this was something that really struck me. We should not be educating our students for the future. We should be educating so they can create their own future. Now, that's something that I don't think we've fully grasped yet, because we're still teaching them what we know. We're not so much teaching them how do they find out stuff that we all don't know. And so we're in this paradigm that we've got to break a little bit. In many ways, the technology that we're using should be challenging and stretching what we're doing in terms of reaching to audacious goals such as this. So that's something that I wanted to bring in the sense of the neuroscience that sits behind this. Now, there's a model I'm going to bring in. I often compare, and some of the podcasts I've been doing lately, look at a technology in terms of two models. One, the SAMR model that Craig mentioned, and does it augment and enhance, which are the bottom two, the S and the R, and the enhancing stage, which is fine, or does it take you into a realm that was impossible with the world of, with the pedagogy before the intervention of the technology? Is it taking you to a space that you couldn't do it without the technology? Now, in saying this, and we're talking front and center about the technology, but I'm a subscriber to learning first, and the why, calling out Craig's mention of the word why. The why in schooling is to increase the opportunity for students to learn from deep and rich experience, to make meaning and craft a future that we're talking about, craft and create their own future. And so for me, it's actually not about the technology, but tonight we're making it about the technology. So this is not about walking into a classroom with an AR app, as a great one like Hologo, and saying, wow, kids, look at this, and having the technology front and center. The technology should be the silent partner that's enhancing and increasing the transformation of the practice of both teaching and learning, such that we're moving towards those audacious goals of changing what we've been doing for such a long time. Now, one of the tools that I like to bring in to compare the SAMA model, which is an ed tech model, is this model by David Rock from the Neuroleadership Institute. And the Neuroleadership Institute is doing a load of research around the practitioner and the researcher and bringing those two together. And this model describes 4 elements that you need for deep learning. Now, it does apply primarily to adult learning, I believe, but I think it works tremendously well at the student, the young child level. In terms of people like Andrew Huberman, who's a neuroscientist widely available on podcast now, you should be listening to. He's now going through the neuroscience of learning. He would talk about the young age, the young brain being 25 and less. So I'm going to talk about that in a second, because there's a different way that the younger brain works compared to our older brains. But back to this model, these 4 elements talk about any deep learning comes from attending to the sensory input that is driving the learning. So holding attention, doing some work in the brain, cognitive load that is matched to, in using Vygotsky's zone of proximal development stuff, if you know that, this idea that the cognitive load is matched to the learning and the base knowledge that we've got already, but some sort of work that goes on in the brain. And it's that work that creates the learning in all of our brains. And without work, there is no learning. And we've got to attach, we don't have to, but when we do attach emotion to this, then what happens in the brain is that the brain recognizes the value, this multi-dimensional value of that learning moment. And it says, this is important. I'm going to mark this new synapse, this new connection between neurons as being important. If we don't do that, if we don't attach emotions, the learning that's represented by new connections in the brain is not as persistent. So together, attention, generation, and emotion are really critical parts of the in-the-moment learning. And the last piece, which I won't speak about a lot tonight because technology struggles to help with this, is to space the learning out over a period of time. Rather than one big bulk of learning, we need to provide many sleep opportunities, referring back to Andrew Huberman again, many sleep opportunities to do the work of the wiring, if you like. But in terms of the technology, we should be saying, how is it helping attention management? How is it deepening the work that's done? How is it creating the moment of emotion that can attach to the new learning such that when the wiring is happening, the wiring is much more permanent? To talk about this one step further, Heather Andrew, and I've got the source there for you to check this out. She runs an organization called Neuroinsight, and she talks about AR as driving high levels of visual attention. And the vision sense is by far the strongest sense for learning in the brain. Difficult for people who don't have sight for some sort of reason, but for normal sighted people, it huge in the acquisition of new learning through the sight channels. And AR elicits the emotion of surprise and joy often. A quick story, if you can indulge me, it might take me over a little bit, but one of our colleagues, Brad Wade, spoke to me when I interviewed him recently about this. And he talks about his own experience where he had a reluctant learner, and in the writing craft and trying to teach transition between paragraphs as a P3, P4 student, starting to emerge into this, there was no material coming from him. Brad could not even instruct him because there were no paragraphs coming. And it wasn't until Brad involved the kids in immersive technology where, first of all, they colored in a dragon on, and I can't think of the app that he used, they colored in a dragon and then used AR to scan and then bring that dragon to life. And in the moment of that dragon having AR reality, not VR, but AR, it was augmented. There was the classroom behind and the dragon came to life, flew around a bit. This ignited the brain of that young child. And that young child, who was a reluctant writer, turned into a voluminous, that's not the right word at this time, but wrote with volume, significant volume, not with much skill. And there was lots of work to be done, but now there was something that Brad could work with because this child was creating inspired and self-motivated volume from the trigger of the AR itself. And that was ongoing, and that child really became a much better student for the impact of that augmented reality. And then the last point, what's stored or encoded into memory is 70% higher for the AR experience. And you can refer to that and check out the sources for that research. So coming back to that idea of attention generation and emotion, we're harnessing better attention, we're creating more engaged work in the brain, and we're triggering emotion in a way that deepens the impact. So there's the technology is there for us to use as a simple tool in the classroom to leverage deeper learning. Now, the last thing that I'd add before I talk about this slide referring to Andrew Huberman is that kids younger than 25, the brain is driven by experience. Older people, older than 25, tend to have other emotions drive, like frustration, strangely enough. But for children, it's experience that drives neuroplasticity. But the curious thing is, particularly with young children, they don't have agency over their experience. So it's imperative on us as educators to curate and be custodians of the best experience we can provide that deepens the learning. So AR, and especially Hologo, is something that can help you curate and deliver much deeper experience that triggers all of that lovely brain stuff. So a couple of quick points before I throw back to Craig. In terms of the technology, we need to maintain that attention by being integrated. We've got a lot of disaggregated stuff, you know, go here for chat, do this for your Zoom call, go to this app to do that. And one of the things that's happening with Hologo in particular is the deep levels of integration that are occurring such that you can do this within the one environment. Sometimes it's not the same app. It's not necessarily always Hologo itself. Hologo is finding ways to be immersed and connected to other platforms such as Showbie, so that when you're delivering in an environment, you don't say, well, close that environment, kids, and go off to this app. You can hold that attention, and that's really key for coming back to the neuroscience. Craig, for that last point, I'll pass that over to you now.
Yeah, thanks so much. You know, I saw some questions here too, and maybe we'll come to that afterwards about Andrew Huberman and some of those pieces, Andrew, as well. But we are going to jump in now, and I do want to show you a little bit of the Hologo app. And Poonam just asked to learn and see a little bit more about Hologo. But you know, mixed reality to me, and I sort of mentioned this earlier on, is a bit of a game changer. It's changing the way we do things. You know, thinking of the SAMA model and, you know, the changing way we use technology to modify and redefine that learning, as mixed reality becomes the new normal, it's going to change the face of education forever. You know, it's not about if this will happen, it's a matter of when. And schools all over the world are jumping on augmented reality, in particular, to redefine the learning experience. Imagine being able to show, you know, the dissection of a heart by jumping into a mixed reality world and doing it on your desk without utilizing physical resources. If you make a mistake, you go back and you do it again. Or teaching a geography lesson on ancient civilizations and creating an experience where students literally walk into a time frame and interact with people in that zone using mixed reality tools and experiences. You know, companies like Apple are bringing out augmented reality glasses soon. You can do some Google searching on your own on augmented reality glasses, which are already in production with this new LiDAR technology, which enables mixed reality experiences to actually wrap around the physical surfaces that are around us as users. It's an exciting time. And, you know, a company that is doing this and a company that we're supporting in this because we truly believe in what they're doing is Hologo. You know, Hologo has hundreds of augmented experiences and new developments that are coming very soon, which are going to allow for more in-depth creation and development very easily to integrate into your curriculum and needs. And Andrew touched on integration and the integration into other tools and experiences. Hologo and Showbie work very closely together. And it's exciting to see that Showbie are being at the forefront of learning really with technologies by embracing the power of this learning, embracing the power of these experiences. And I love that because they're saying, let's do it. Let's go for it. We know it's important. Let's integrate it into our system. Let's not push them out and do it elsewhere. Let's do it within here. And let's bring all of those learning needs together. So let's jump into the app and we'll open up this next video and I'll walk you through the experience a little bit. And while we're watching, go to hologo.world in your browser, hologo.world, and maybe Andrew can type that in for you and share the link. Check out the details and download the app for free in your app store. And you can start doing some experiences too. So this is the app. And, in this app, this is the Hologo resource page, and we're jumping into a tooth decay experience here. And we can see that the slides of the AR lesson are showing with the labeling features, and so much more. So this is a gamified experience, a very basic level of a gamified experience, something that is very, very exciting. We're able to actually gamify this experience in our house. Jumping back here to the library, and you can see the assessment piece, which is showing as well. We've got a plant here that I can grab and I can pull in, and I can create a gamified experience. I really can. I can put this here. I can play a match the labels game, which means that I drag and I drop and it tells me if I'm right or wrong. This is a very simple, version. It gamifies that based on speed and based on my accuracy. It then gives me other, next steps as well. And then jumping in here into the journeys section, which in my mind is even more exciting. We've got a doorway here that can lead us to any experience that we wanted. You can see here that I'm literally walking into this space and I'm able to be in space, literally, in my lounge room or in your classroom, that I can walk in and I can experience. And going back to the data that Andrew shared, and the piece of stuff from Heather Andrew, the CEO of Neuroscience, imagine that this experience is at the very beginning of its development. These experiences are changing every day. We're actually able to change our learning experiences with companies like Hologo, who are literally changing the face of learning, changing the way we do things. It's not just 360 photos anymore. And if you're a fan of, like me, of Google Expeditions, I used to be a big fan of that, and Google Expeditions is shutting down now. And Hologo, to me, is the next generation of Google Expeditions. Take that, multiply it by 100, and imagine the sorts of amazing things you can do. And not only that, but Hologo provide you with the opportunity to actually learn and grow with them. They don't want to be an app that sits there and builds what they think you need. They want to build alongside you. So they're actually looking for people all over the world to jump in for free and trial this app. Jump in and experience it. Tell them what you want to see. What parts of the curriculum do you teach that they can create augmented experiences around? And we're more than happy to introduce you to the team. The best next step for you to do, if you're interested in jumping into the world of augmented reality and this experiential learning, is download the Hologo app and give it a go yourself. I give it to my 3-year-old and my 7-year-old, and they absolutely love it. The learning is like no other. It's an incredible opportunity for you to try something new. So with that, and hopefully you've had the opportunity to go away and look at hologo.world, download the app, have a play around with it. I'll stop talking there and open up to any questions. Maybe, Andrew, I'll throw back to you to do with the questions here on Vygotsky and also Andrew Huberman.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. I'm just leaving that running in the background. Do you want me to stop the share now? Do you think that's appropriate? Do you think I'll leave that running in the background? Might leave that there. That's okay. Andrew Huberman, I've put both of those. I've put the Hologo link in. Andrew Huberman is a professor out of the Stanford University, hugely accessible and massively impactful, a simple set of strategies you can apply from the research he brings. He's a fabulous guy to listen to, and he's really challenged a lot of what I've held as tenets of education, and he's really made my brain grow this year. So he's right across social media. So if you look up the Huberman Lab, I've put his name there on the platform of your choice and even YouTube. And he is hugely just wonderful to listen to. I'm a real fanboy, and love Vygotsky. I always get his name wrong, particularly with being a bit dyslexic and tired, but he's written the zone of proximal development. It's a very old theory, but it means that your learning should be founded on, it's really scaffolding in modern terminology. And so what this whole piece does about cognitive load is that it scaffolds beautifully so that students can build from there. A final comment I'd make about this is, while we're showing content, it's actually way more than the content. The content itself triggers a great deal, but it's also the next step in terms of how you structure your pedagogy around this opportunity to trigger collaboration, connection with kids, what it starts to create in their own minds. It's more than just here, look at a heart, here, look at a tooth, here, look at a shark. If you go through the journey and apply its potential to the depth of pedagogy, you'll start to see its value. So that's probably enough for me, I think, Craig. We've got a couple of questions I can see.
That's awesome, Andrew. Yeah, totally. I put Andrew and my contact details in here as well, so you can connect with us and reach out to us. I'm more than happy to do that. Graham, I'll pass back to you for any questions.
And yeah, just for everybody else, if you've got any questions to ask, please add them into the chat and add them or into the Q&A feature. One thing I would really like to inquire a bit more about is the schools and educators you're working with. Whereabouts in the writing process does this come along, and are there any other ways that people are using Hologo that's separate from kind of that writing and development of literacy?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, we've seen this being used across the board, from young learners, preschool examples of learning to count, do all sorts of physical activities, all the way through to primary and secondary, and then post-secondary as well, across subject areas. At the moment, we see a lot of augmented reality in the fields of science, in the fields of mathematics, like you said, to engage in the literacy process. But we're seeing it across the board in multiple areas now. And one of the really exciting examples I've seen recently is in physical education and health, and seeing that being used to engage particularly, middle and high school students in areas that often have a bit of disengagement. And it's really exciting to see, number one, the engagement factor that these sorts of technologies provide, but then the advancement of learning, not just from that engagement piece, but actually the next steps learning, not just the content, but actually the next steps of the learning experience. Andrew, I don't know if you wanted to jump in there as well.
One of the other things I would mention is that there's a great desire for localization too. So while we've described, an English-based approach to this, one of the extensions of this is to move into countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, even Brazil, to work with schools to localize and develop the content collaboratively. And Craig sort of alluded to that before. So it's something we in a sort of a world that we're now beginning to understand diversity, equity, and inclusion, that we need to be able to provide engaging material and resources, and they're not just based in English. So if anyone's in countries that are non-English speaking, that's another element. So that's the main thing. I think the opportunities going forward are really untapped, and this ability to start to look at unique and unusual ways that we can start to consider the use of AR in geography, the use of AR, clearly physics, and some of the, now we know, like I used to teach biology, and the smell of formaldehyde is still with me as we cut open at rats, in real, dead and preserved rats, obviously. And now we're moving to this world where we can go beyond just a single asset, but we go into deeper, longer assets that allow kids to fully explore in ways that are safer, more engaging, and don't need us to be somewhere to do it. We can do this in our own homes. And in a COVID world, that's something we shouldn't underestimate. Even for parents to engage in rich conversation around a learning point. I use it to talk with my son about content in the Singapore system that doesn't have this richness, unfortunately, but he's a Singaporean citizen. And we look at things like the solar controller system and some of the maths principles to deepen. So at a parental level, I think it has a lot of opportunity too.
Yeah, and I think like features like on the iPad, like the screen recording, they can truly bring to life the understanding that the children have got, haven't they? So if I think back to my days as a geography teacher, we would do about animal adaptations for ecosystems, and you can guarantee it's a worksheet where I'm going to write about why an elephant's got such big ears, why it's got tusks, whereas actually with these augmented reality experiences, you can just bring that animal into the room and talk about it. And so the value massive there for the learning experience.
On that point, that's a really great comparison. And as a trigger for deep conversation, rather than just here, look at this elephant, work in groups of 2 or 3, explore this elephant. And the question we've got for you is why the ear's so big. So have a good look at it, consider where it lives, see what you can see in the real animal, and collaborate in small groups to come up with your best answer. We'll discuss. So that's what I mean about taking it beyond just the content. We can build it into the pedagogy, which is a much richer experience than the worksheet. And I used to use worksheets all of the time in my face-to-face teaching, and I wish I'd had something like Hologo, particularly as a biology and science teacher.
Yeah, I can't see any more questions coming through, so there's a lot of interest in the research, and thank you for posting those papers and the links into there. That'll be really valuable. We'll make sure that we get those links from you so we can tweet them out as well for people who are interested in them. I would really like to thank you for your time this afternoon or this evening, and hopefully you've not had too much coffee to keep you going beyond this 10 p.m. time. And yeah, just as I say, it's been a real pleasure sort of listening and gaining that insight to the experiences that you've got working with the schools that you have done over the last 15 months. We've got, obviously Hologo is one of our partner apps and part of our school kit level of subscription. And, if anybody is interested in a current Showbie customer, have a look on the website, reach out to the account manager and talk to us. More than happy to take demonstrations and conversations a little bit further. We've got a panel discussion coming up at 5 p.m, which is based around EdTech demonstrators in the UK and how they help and support and advance the use of technology in the classroom. And then we've got our networking event at 6 o'clock, where we've got the staff room that's being manned by Chris. So check the website out for more for tomorrow. And thank you very much for everybody for contributing. Thank you for watching, and thanks again for giving up your time this evening.
Great to be involved. Thanks, everyone. Stay well and take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.